This is the Passion to Prominence podcast, where real business owners, practitioners, and leaders share what actually works. Old school grit, modern strategy, and the people who figured it out. Let's get into it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Passion to Prominence podcast. I'm your host, Charlie McCarthy, owner of McCarthy Group Strategic Consulting. And today I have the distinct privilege of being joined on the show by our guest, Jenny Melville. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. My name is Jenny Melville, as Charlie said, and I am a small business owner of West Seattle Pilates, and I've owned the business for about 8 years now. So I'm super excited to talk about business and hopefully give you guys some exciting things to hear and think about.
You undoubtedly will. Being in business, especially as a small business owner for 8 years, is no small feat, as I think a lot of our audience members will acknowledge. Why don't we start, Jenny, by talking about those 8 years ago? What was going on in life? What spurred you to found West Seattle Pilates? And what kind of pushed you to make that leap?
Yeah, so I would say it was pushed back to like 2016, and I was teaching at 3 different studios all over the greater Seattle area. And, it's just kind of getting tired of working for other people and driving around everywhere. And I've always wanted to own my own business. So I started kind of bouncing the idea off of people that I knew. And as I would tell them the idea, they would get so excited. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is my time. This is, a good time to start it. And so I actually told another instructor that I was friends with about it. And she came back to me and was like, I want to help you do this. And so we spent a whole year, all of 2017, working on a business plan. And when it came to fruition and we were done with the business plan, I started looking at spaces, and that person decided not to continue with the business, but I knew this was what I wanted to do, and that wasn't going to deter me. So I found a space and just pushed forward in 2018 and opened my doors.
Yeah, you were in deep at that point. I can imagine spending a year like getting the business plan going, starting to visualize what this could actually be like, and like, oh man, I'm actually going to do this. Like,
yeah,
there's no stopping at that point.
No, yeah, it wasn't even a thought. Even when she told me like, oh, I'm not ready, I was like, well, I am. So so it felt very right and like a solid decision.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How much do you remember about day one or launch day or when it actually happened and what you were feeling?
Yeah, because I teach Pilates classes, so they're very attendance based. So it was like, oh, what if no one shows up? And luckily you have to schedule into a class. So I had an idea, but still nervous. I'm selling myself as far as me as an instructor. And I was definitely nervous. I think there was also a lot of excitement around it because it was finally coming to fruition. And yeah, I think it was kind of a mixed bag of feelings. There's some adrenaline, but also felt really ready. And I knew I was a good instructor. I knew I had that confidence, but you never know, there's always that little gremlin in the back of your head that wants to, negative self-talk or kind of make you self-doubt for a second. So
like that imposter syndrome.
For sure. What if this is the day everyone figures out I'm terrible? I don't know. But overall, obviously it went okay. So yeah.
We'll get into employees and onboarding, as you grow your business and need more help a little bit later in the episode. But when we compare that to, starting out and being solo for a certain period of time before you grew to a point where you took that next step and brought on some additional instructors, when we talk about the imposter syndrome or the self-doubt, I can speak from experience also as a small business owner and some of those intrusive thoughts creeping in, I know I'm completely capable. I'm awesome. I'm really smart and I'm a master at my craft, but these people don't know that, and trying to build trust with them. Going at it alone, for a lot of small business owners, feedback that we get is it can be pretty isolating. What tools did you use, or how did you help bolster yourself in some of those moments when some of the intrusive thoughts started to creep in? Was it making connections with other solo entrepreneurs in the community? Was it kind of just like bite down on the stick and keep moving forward? How did you manage that?
Mhm. I think it's a combination of things. Like I would talk to, friends are very important to me, and, I definitely bounce things off of them, or, talk about that doubt. Or I also had a therapist slash coach during that time, and that was very important to me.
Very helpful.
Because yeah, she owned her own business too, but when you're having that self-doubt, you kind of can stay in that negative train. And she was really good at pushing out and being like, what if this happens? What's the flip side of that, of like, maybe everything thrives instead of fails? Or I think it's important to have some kind of outlet, and sometimes it is just pushing through and getting through that moment and realizing like, I'm okay. It didn't end anything. And sometimes just kind of letting the negative thought go through and then out the other ear. Don't let it just sit there, because that's where you can kind of go down a rabbit hole, and you don't want to do that.
Totally. I find myself in those situations. Something that's been helpful for me is giving myself permission to put the thought aside for a day. Like, all right, I'm not going to think about this anymore today, whether or not it is an actual real concern. I'm not going to think about it again until tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And 9.5 times out of 10, when I wake up the next morning, it's like either gone and I'm not concerned about it anymore. It was maybe just a little blip of anxiety, or like something else has happened. I received a random email overnight that kind of counters whatever thing that I was worried about. Um,
Totally.
but yeah, giving yourself permission just to like acknowledge that they're only thoughts, and that doesn't mean that
Right.
that's reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes speaking it is so important because it does get it out. And then, yeah, like not to get all woo woo, but like the universe sometimes hears that and then gives you what you need. I've had those moments a lot, and like, and they don't go unnoticed. But yeah, I think sometimes instead of just holding it in, even if it's like journaling, like just get it out of your system, and it will work out.
Yeah, give your brain that opportunity to process whatever it is and release it and then
Yes.
move forward. I also
Yes.
really liked what you said about having a coach or a mentor, and having that advocate who can be like, what if everything goes okay? All these other people
Mhm.
do it. If they're doing it, why not
Mhm.
you? One of
Mhm.
the best coaches that I had also, she did that, but she also provided thinking on the other side of the spectrum that helped a lot, which was based on this program that I think it's trademarked out there actually, and I'll put links to it in the show notes, but it's breakthrough thinking. Have you heard of this before?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, where and an exercise that she and I would go through that helped me a lot was, what are you worried about? Okay, well, say that happens. What are you going to do?
Yes.
Then
Like
what are you going to
working through
do?
it. Yeah.
Okay, say the worst case scenario happened. Then, and so you'd go step by step and like, okay, if the worst thing imaginable happens to me, I've already thought about how I'm going to handle that. And so it kind of
Right.
also gives you permission to be like, all right, well, I'm going to move forward assuming everything's going to work out. But if it doesn't, my brain already knows I have part of a plan in the background and I'm still going to be fine. I'm going to be okay.
Totally.
So I found that to
Totally.
be a
Yeah.
really powerful mental exercise.
Yeah. I agree. I think that, and yeah, another helpful tip was that like your brain's going to always have that. There's always going to be some negative talk, but knowing how to deal with that negative talk, it's not like it's ever going to go away or you're just always going to be like so positive and happy. That's not realistic, but the way you deal with it can change. And that's something she taught me too, of similar to that kind of an exercise, or seeing, almost like seeing the thoughts go through your brain, and then, okay, I see it, now it's going to leave, not, it doesn't have to stay, and that's your narrative now. Yeah, I think those things are really important, and to know that it is going to happen.
Yes. Yeah, we're only human and we're going to wake up every day with different thoughts, different emotions, and just being able to harness that mindfulness and self-awareness and emotional regulation, I think is one of the most powerful tools in a business owner's toolkit.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot a little bit, Jenny, and still
Okay.
kind of talking about the early years, but just a couple years into your business, it sounds like a global pandemic started. right?
Yes. Yes.
Talk about some of your initial reactions when it started to become clearer and clearer, like, okay, I'm not going to be able to offer my in-person services, which is kind of, I would imagine, can be an alarming thing, especially for
For
the
sure.
fitness industry, because so much personal connection happens in person. How did you think about
Mhm.
navigating that shift at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, I mean, it was weird for everyone, but it was weird for somebody to say you can't go to work. And so luckily I had a client that um at the end of 2019, she had moved to California and she wanted to do a couple more private lessons through Zoom. And I had never heard of Zoom. And so she introduced me to it and we would do them over Zoom. And then I had another client who traveled a lot. So we started doing her private lessons when she's traveling during the week in her hotel room or in the gym of the hotel. So I was familiar with it, which was, I think, really helpful. I think when the pandemic hit, you kind of go into survival mode. And I was like, okay, I'm going to shift all my classes to Zoom. I remember sending an email out because it was like countdown to like going into lockdown and no one was allowed to go anywhere. And I think because everyone was in it together, people were seeking out how to still connect with people. And I will say I was lucky in that, I'm not lucky. I mean, I worked hard the years before my business and I worked at different studios that clients that I taught in the past sought me out on Zoom, which was a blessing in so many ways. Like it was nice to connect with old faces, but also people wanting to support me because they knew that I had my own business and that's it. And yeah, in some ways it turned into kind of a magical thing for a while, and it just kind of had to pivot as quickly as possible. And I know that some places weren't willing to do that, but I didn't see any other option, to be honest. So um, yeah.
That's a pretty impressive story, especially to have folks seeking you out in a moment like that where they're looking for community. And I think it's important for us to maybe highlight for some of the newer business owners that are consuming this podcast is how important community and relationships are, not networking per se, but relationship
Hmm.
building
Hmm.
is within small business. Because you think about that, the pandemic started, everything did move to online. Think about the number of fitness providers that probably did move to online courses, and people came to you, they chose you, they trust you, they care about
Right.
you, and like supporting your business makes
Yeah,
a huge difference.
it does. Yeah, and that does not go unnoticed either.
Well, it says a lot
I
about who you are as a person and your values as a business owner and stuff. So kudos
Yeah.
there. That's what I was trying to get at, was like,
Thank you.
hell
Thank
yeah,
you.
girl.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Um, so it took a while for things to start to open up, like,
Mhm.
gosh, end of 2021, maybe beginning of 2022 is when I felt like more outfits started getting comfortable with resuming like
Mhm.
in-person operations. And even then it was like, okay, are we actually doing this? Or is this,
Mhm.
we're going to go back into some really difficult times again? It was really touch and go for a little bit there. But
Right.
moving out of it when it started to become more clear that like, okay, we might be able to get back to real life, quote unquote.
Right.
Did what occurred for your business during the pandemic change anything about how you thought about your business or your business model moving forward,
Mhm.
and how it was at the very beginning versus how you wanted to carry forward beyond the pandemic?
Yeah. Well, my biggest thing was I wanted people to feel comfortable. And funny enough, so when we were able to go back just one on one, I was doing just privates and duets. And then in 2022, like once the vaccine rolled out, people started to kind of come out of the woodwork because they wanted to move their bodies. They've been sitting, they want to get some kind of routine going again. And I ended up expanding to a larger space that was like four times the size of my original studio. And we made it small. It was for reformers. So it didn't feel scary to go into like a group class again. We were diligent about please wear a mask if you'd like to. I wanted to make it so that people felt safe and comfortable. We had hand sanitizer, it's always been, luckily with fitness, like there is some cleanliness to it. Like you have to clean everything off. So that is important. Not to say every place is diligent about it, but that's part of the process. And yeah, it was, I knew that some studios had closed down in West Seattle. So I knew there was a population out there that was wanting reformer Pilates. And so we opened our doors, and it's been an amazing 4 years since that time that people really feel comfortable, and we've kept it small. And I think there's something special about that, because again, it does create community, but also I think people were craving that. And you'd see people come in that didn't know each other and just introduce themselves. And like, it's so sweet to see that, we read a lot of news and a lot of terrible stories about shitty people, and there's a lot of good people, and you just have to kind of look around and find them. And I went off subject, but I think that's important to know, to really see and observe. And I think that was something that really came out of the pandemic.
Something good, some silver lining.
Yeah, for sure.
Since then, Jenny, you've achieved an admirable amount of success. For some of the early business owners who are listening, can you talk about the decision process for you related to bringing on additional instructors? I think small business owners, the goal is often like to make a living and sustain ourselves, but a lot of goals also involve like growing a business and maybe taking on employees or additional instructors in your case at some point. How did you know when it was the right time to do that? And then how did you go about doing so?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely have a growth mindset. I, at the time, was working from like 6 a.m. to noon, and then like 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., like 4 days a week. And I was working 6 days a week teaching and kind of running myself into the ground. I had another instructor already, and then we just needed more help. And the studio was growing, and it was more of a, when can I find like I need somebody now, because I do want to create this community, and I do have a growth mindset, and their demand was out there that I wanted people to be able to get into a class and move. And so yeah, it was kind of more of a like, I'm going to burn myself out, and I'm not going to be able to do this if I don't hire other people, because I'm definitely wired to where I will push myself to that limit, but it's not a healthy one. Yeah, I was kind of forced into it in a way, in a good way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
No, success is, it's typically not a bad thing. And then how do you approach retention for folks that you bring on? Is the industry that you're in typically pretty high turnover as far as instructors, maybe serving at more than one studio or moving? Like, how do you
It can be
forecast kind of what business is going to be for you depending on instructor availability?
Yeah. And when you say retention, you're meeting instructors, correct?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Not clientele,
I just want to
instructors.
make sure. Yeah. I think because for 10 years I was an instructor for somebody else, or, at other studios, I know what I like, and I know how I wanted to be seen by being paid a proper wage. I try to really connect with the instructors. They're helping me out, right? Like, yes, they are my employee, but like, they're not below. I don't see them as below me. I see them as equal level, right? They are just as important as anyone else. And I try to be available to them. And, most of my instructors have been with me for several years. The only reason why one of them left is because she moved to California, but it can be tough when that happens, because they are so ingrained in the studio and the community that it is a loss for a lot of people. But having a plan, the other reason why it's nice to have more people, and I'm not teaching as much, is so that when those transitions happen, I can step in and help out momentarily until we find somebody or the right personality or the right person to kind of take over those classes or those lessons. But, I respect the people that have worked for me. A lot of them are instructors that I've worked with at previous studios, and some of them are friends. But yeah, I do value that I'm a very loyal person, and I feel like you get that in return if that's something you offer. And I've always been, my kind of, not slogan, but like my idea towards employees is if they're happy, your business is going to be happy. And so I want to make sure they're getting what they need. And I try to keep the door open as much as I can. If there is something that's going on that's wrong, or they need to change their schedule, that they come to me right away, as opposed to just being done or, having to leave. Yeah.
All of what you just said, very much I'm aligned with it completely. And it points back to that relationship building aspect again, whether it's customers or people that you're working with, building solid, healthy relationships with clear, consistent, respectful communication and making sure people feel valued and respected cannot be overstated as far as importance to a small business in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're like family. I mean, yeah, they're very important to me, and hopefully they know that, but
I get a feeling that they do.
yeah.
Okay, groovy. Let's see. Got about 10 minutes left here. I'm going to switch gears so we can chat about something that I want to call out to the audience. Jenny suggested during our prep session we touch on, and I'm super grateful that she did, because it's not a topic that gets enough space in conversations about the fitness industry. And I think what Jenny has to share here is going to mean a lot to people listening. And so we wanted to check in about being a plus size fitness instructor. And I'm just going to open it up to you. What would you like people to know?
Yeah, I think that, there's stigma, especially nowadays with social media, and it's a platform for people to really be
Influencer culture.
nasty. Yes. Yes. And a lot of times, if you see fitness things on Instagram or social media, it's very staged, very whatever. But, I have a normal body. It's a plus size body, and I've always been athletic. I've always, been strong. And I think a lot of people, when they see fitness advertised, they're like, well, I don't look like that, so I can't do that. And that's not true. I think that in some ways being in a normal body is benefited because it's less intimidating. And I think that just because you don't look like somebody else doesn't mean that you're not qualified. I'm not selling my aesthetic by any means. I am selling my education, my training, my free therapy. No, I'm just kidding. But like I have so much to offer that doesn't have anything to do with my body. And I think a lot of times that gets skewed in fitness, and a lot of fitness places, they thrive on people's insecurities. And I want to make you feel more confident, not dwell on those insecurities. I want to make you feel strong and healthy. And I think there are a lot of fitness instructors out there like that. And you see it more. It is pushing its way through, which I think is really amazing. But I think that it's skewed of what somebody can be successful at, even though they don't model what you think they should model. Yeah. I feel very lucky and again, I say lucky. I don't know if luck's the right thing to say, but
no, you busted your ass. It's not
fortunate. All luck. Yeah, I have. And, I genuinely love people, and I like getting to know people. And I've always wanted to create an environment that people feel comfortable, and they can be who they want to be. They can dress. You can come in a t-shirt and baggy sweatpants. You could come in a cute little matching set, like whatever you want to wear, that's what you wear. We don't push any agenda there as far as aesthetics go.
So
which
really,
I think is so different. So,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was finishing.
I was just going to say it's a very powerful message, considering what I think most, if not all of us, have been exposed to when entering a fitness space where the overarching message or subliminal message seems to be you're here because you're not enough and need to change something about yourself versus you're here and it's a judgment-free zone and you're accepted exactly as you are and you're here because you want to feel stronger, you want to feel healthier, you want to build a community, like just
Right.
completely different,
Yeah.
much healthier messaging, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And even if you, the website, we did a photo shoot with real clients, and those are the people that are on the website, like, again, a lot of times you see fitness models, which everyone's got to work, but
Sure.
I think making it, when you go to a studio, not everyone looks like that. Like, that's just not realistic. And again, people see those images and then they think, I can't do that. Or, I've even had people call that say, oh, I've never done Pilates. Do I need to do something before I come into class? No, just just show up. We will meet you where you're at and get you to where you want to be. Yeah, I think it's just, there's a lot of stigma. So trying to like push through that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been a fascinating conversation, and I think the audience is going to glean a lot of good nuggets out of it. I like to close episodes with a bit of owner reflection. If you're thinking about yourself,
Mhm.
not only as a business owner, but as a person, mental, emotional health, and all the ways that you've grown over this time since starting your business. How do you think about that person then versus the person that you are now?
Mhm. When I first started off, I mean, I had a lot of energy, which is great. And I was single, I lived by myself, and I was just ready for some more responsibility. And I definitely did some things by the seat of my pants, and other things were thought out. And reflecting now, like, I feel more comfortable with who I am, and I'm definitely a little bit more tired than I used to be.
Same.
I've been in a 4-year relationship. I have like stepkids in my life. Like, my life's changed so much too. And it's almost been parallel to the business as it's hit a milestone in business. I've hit milestones in my personal life. And,
Isn't that interesting?
you know, it is interesting because you're like, I don't know, just adding more things on. But it's also because of those personal things, it's made me evolve who I am in the business. I'm not just the sole instructor anymore. Now I'm more of the owner manager, still teach, but it's not as, I was teaching 40 to 50 hours a week at one point. Now I'm teaching about 20, 25. So
Oh, nice.
um yeah, being able to shift more into business development, that kind of stuff. So definitely different from 8 years ago.
In what sound like mostly very, very good ways.
Yes, very much.
Yes. Fabulous. Okay, well, we've got a few minutes left here. Why don't we close out with some advice for the audience? If you were talking to another solo entrepreneur or future solo entrepreneur who is kind of on the fence about taking a leap and going out on their own and venturing, but they're feeling a bit overwhelmed, what wisdom would you share with them or advice or
Yeah, I would definitely suggest talking to somebody about it, getting it down on paper. I see a lot of today, like, people are so afraid of failure. And I saw this quote or not a few years, a few months ago, that was like, what a privilege it is to fail, because that means that you tried. And that, like, spoke so true to me of like, yeah, most people don't even try, right? So I think, just pushing yourself to do it if you're really feeling passionate about it. That self-doubt is always going to be there, but yeah, I just say go for it. And what have you got to lose, right? I
right?
mean,
Well,
there are things, but
but that's why we have breakthrough thinking. We'll think about all those
yeah,
things, where
for
failure points and
sure.
have a plan for those.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
couldn't agree more. I think a lot of it is about starting, not being afraid of failure. Also, stop giving any farts about what anyone else thinks. Like that fear of perception and putting yourself
Yeah.
out there. It's like, you know what? You're the one out there doing the thing. And we wish all
Right.
these other people out doing things, all the success in the world in whatever ways that success means to them. But there's going to be 50% of the population that looks at what you're doing and gets judgy about it. And you kind of just have to be able to cut that off and let it all
Yeah.
go.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Just do it. Do the
Just do
damn
it.
thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I can't tell you enough, Jenny, how much I enjoyed this conversation, and I'm glad that we were
Yeah.
able to connect. For some of our local audience members, what is the best way to explore West Seattle Pilates offerings? Where can they find you?
Pilates.com. It's all one word. That's a great way to look at prices and classes. And then you can email me, West Seattle Pilates at gmail.com.
Perfect. Okay, thanks again for being here. I hope we get to talk again soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this.
Thanks for tuning in to the Passion to Prominence podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and come back next time for another real conversation about practical strategies for growing a business.